Thank you everyone for joining us for the Kickoff and Orientation webinar for the virtual BioBlitz at Oregon's Marine Reserves this year. My name is Margaret Treadwell, and I am the coordinator for Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. And I'm joined tonight by representatives from each of the other 5 marine reserves, or other 4 actually, there's 5 total. And I'll introduce them in just a moment. But first, just a quick overview. So at the marine reserves in Oregon, we conduct BioBlitzes once or twice a year with support from the Oregon Coast Aquarium and other partners. So a BioBlitz is a survey of plants and animals with the goal of identifying all the species to be found in an area at one time. And at the marine reserves, we typically do our BioBlitzes in tide pool areas. And we'll go into a lot more detail on that coming up. This year, in order to responsibly comply with social distancing guidelines, we're doing kind of a hybrid approach. So that involves providing this instruction webinar online, and then we're going to ask you to go out with your own household group and record your observations in the iNaturalist app. So as I said, my name is Margaret, and I'm joined tonight by representatives from the other marine reserves, who I'll introduce now. Maybe each of you can wave or say hi when I say your name. So from north to south, because that's how we always do it. From north to south, we have Paul Robertson from Cascade Head. Hi, Paul.
Hi there. Thanks for everybody for joining.
We have Dennis White from Otter Rock.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
And we have 2 Taras. We have Tara Dubois from Cape Perpetua.
Good evening, everyone.
And Tara Ramsey from Redfish Rocks.
Hello.
Thank you all for being here. So these are the topics we're going to cover tonight. We have what's a BioBlitz, what are Oregon's marine reserves, a little bit about tide pool etiquette and safety, how to participate using iNaturalist, and then when and where to go at each of the marine reserves if you want to participate in a BioBlitz. So now I'm going to kick it over to Tara D to cover what is a BioBlitz. So just let me know when you need me to advance the slides, Tara.
Okay. So a BioBlitz is basically an intense period where we will go and try to document as many of the different species in a given area, so we can take a look at the biodiversity. And the app that we use is iNaturalist, and you can see in this top picture here, you can use your iPad, your iPhone, or any phone where you can download an app, and you can download that app and just take a picture of it, and it will kind of upload into the cloud. It's something you don't have to worry about having Wi-Fi, particularly in the Cape Perpetua area. We don't get Wi-Fi or signal very easily. And once you hit that again, it will pull up. But really what we want to do is just document as many species as possible. And take time to look through everything too, even within the mussels. You can see at the bottom picture here, I see the comment, they just recognized that was Paul, I believe. But the bottom picture there's a blue porcelain crab that's hiding among the mussels. So definitely take your time when you're out doing this and search in all the little crevices. Okay. And then why do we do BioBlitz events? We do BioBlitz events, again, so we can catalog the species diversity. And the areas that we focus on for the marine reserves, as Margaret said, are the intertidal regions that are adjacent to the marine reserves or the protected areas. And this another reason that we do them is to help raise awareness of the marine reserves. They came online in 2012, and so just sharing information about them, and also to help document change over time. So what we do this year, and we can look at that data compared to what we might observe and catalog in 5 years. So it helps us recognize those potential shifts of biodiversity. Okay. And anyone can participate in the BioBlitz event, of any age, anybody, any capability. You can even just take your camera out and upload it later if you don't want to download an app to your phone. So there's a variety of ways that you can do it, but basically, again, you're just taking snapshots, pictures of the intertidal creatures, and you'll want to connect to a project depending on your location. For example, since I'm from Cape Perpetua, we have the Cape Perpetua BioBlitz series. And if you connect with that project, any animal that you take a picture of that's within that region, it will automatically upload to that project. So then we can monitor what species are being cataloged and share that out as well. And if you don't know what you're taking a picture of, somebody else from anywhere in the world who's connected into iNaturalist can come in and identify the species for you. So don't hesitate if you don't know what it is. In fact, it's even more exciting if you don't, because then you can find out later and learn something new. And these here are just some of the common animals that you might see in the tide pools, from sea anemones to California mussels, ochre sea stars, urchins, chitons, limpets, a whole variety, but these are some common ones that you might see. And then something to note as well, including the intertidal creatures that you see hunkered down on the rocks. We also would like if you took pictures of any seabirds or birds or other animals that might be interacting in that area when you're there as well. So if you see even a river otter running down and playing in the tide pools, if you're so lucky, that would be something that you could catalog as well. But these are some of the common seabirds that are here in the area, depending on where you'll be along the coast. And so don't just limit it to the tide pool creatures. You're welcome to catalog anything you may see at that time at the location you're at. Okay, over to you, Margaret.
All right. Thank you so much, Tara. So I'm just going to talk briefly about Oregon's marine reserves for anyone who is not familiar with them. So there are 5 marine reserves in Oregon, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife oversees them. Most of them also include marine protected areas, and I will explain that in a moment. So these went into effect in 2012, 2014, and 2016 from legislation. And they're in Oregon's territorial sea, which goes out 3 miles from the shore. So you can see the border in this picture, this map here. And there are community groups at each marine reserve, and that's who we represent. And those community groups support community science, outreach, and education projects at the marine reserves. So Oregon created the marine reserves with 3 goals: to conserve marine habitats and biodiversity, to provide living laboratories for doing scientific research, and to do those while avoiding significant economic impacts. So marine reserves are areas where all removal of marine life is prohibited and ocean development is also prohibited. And then marine protected areas, or MPAs for short, are adjacent to the marine reserves, and ocean development is still prohibited, but some fishing activities are allowed, and the specific rules vary from site to site. And lastly, it's just important to note that marine reserves and MPAs are open to all non-extractive activities, including boating without fishing equipment deployed, beach walking, surfing, and tide pool exploration. So this year you can participate in the BioBlitz at any one of the 5 marine reserves, or more than one really. And we'll go through the details for each site just a little bit later in the presentation. But remember, if you can't get to the coast, we encourage you to also record observations of plants and animals in your area, in your backyard or local park, and you can still learn a lot about the nature in your area while contributing to science. So just want to talk a bit about safety. So this hybrid version of the BioBlitz lets you go whenever the low tide, weather, and ocean swell conditions work for you. So just pick a low tide when daylight is plentiful. Give yourself time to get there and return home safely. And keep in mind that it's best to arrive at least an hour before slack tide. So that's the actual time of low tide when it turns from going out to coming back in. And that's so that you just have plenty of time to explore the intertidal before the ocean starts, the waves start kind of getting you. Also, just be mindful of the ocean swell conditions that can make reaching the rocks a little bit dangerous, and check the current outlook. We always say in Oregon, never turn your back on the ocean. And Oregon is prone to sneaker waves and other unsafe conditions that are less common in other parts of the world and other parts of the country. So just keep that in mind and use your best judgment. Also quickly wanted to address COVID-19 related safety. I think we've covered up a little bit there. So follow when you're BioBlitzing, follow current Oregon Health Authority guidelines and state and local rules. So face coverings is recently changed. It's very hard to keep track of these things because they keep changing, but face coverings are required for indoor public spaces, and as of yesterday, they're required in outdoor public spaces when physical distancing is not possible. Please follow other guidelines, including stay home if you are sick. To avoid exposure to COVID-19, stay home if you are at risk for severe complications. And if you become symptomatic, please be sure to leave and return home. Practice good hygiene, frequent hand washing for at least 20 seconds, or use hand sanitizer. Cover your coughs and sneezes with an elbow or tissue, and avoid touching your face. And most importantly, practice that physical distancing of at least 6 feet between you and people you do not live with. So that's why we're asking people to go out in household groups. If you go out with your family or other folks who you live with, you can do a nice intertidal BioBlitz without having any risk. And then stay close to home. Avoid overnight trips and minimize other non-essential travel. They have asked for people to stay within 50 miles of home. So we wanted to reiterate that as well. Tide pool etiquette. So when you're out in tide pools, there's a lot to watch out for just to make sure you're not damaging the ecosystem. So walk on sand or bare rock. That is safest for you and the marine organisms. Please don't use a walking stick because it applies a lot of pressure that can be deadly to those fragile organisms. Slow down. So you may have noticed when you're in tide pools that sometimes when you walk up to a tide pool, you'll see a whole bunch of animals kind of scurrying under the rock as you approach, particularly those tide pool sculpins, the little fish, and crabs. They see you coming and they hide, but if you stand still and keep quiet and wait for a while, they will come back out. So you will see more if you move slowly and quietly observe. We ask that you be gentle, so touch the animals gently with one wet finger, don't poke or prod them. If you need to pick an animal up, keep your hands low to the ground so they don't have far to fall. Please leave animals attached to their rocks. So pulling organisms off of rocks could be lethal. You know, many of the animals such as sea stars and chitons have parts of their body that are adapted to attach really firmly to those rocks. And if you pull them off, it can hurt them and kill them possibly. Take only pictures and memories. Please don't remove anything from the beach or tide pool. Empty shells are a critical habitat for many organisms, and some use them for other purposes too, but one of the most obvious is a hermit crab who doesn't make his own shell but needs to use the discarded shells from other animals. And then if you move any items around like a rock, please put them back the way you found them, because some things live under the rock and some things live on top, and if you turn it upside down and leave it upside down, the animals might not survive after you've done that. All right, so we're going to get into how to participate using iNaturalist, but before we do, I just wanted to ask everyone else, all the rest of our partners, if you guys had anything to add to what I have covered.
Just real quick, sneaker waves. Even though there'll be low tides, you never know if a sneaker wave may come along. So that kind of ties in with don't turn your back to the ocean, but kind of keep an eye on if you see a big one coming and know your route out.
I always like to say when I'm doing mussel harvesting classes, like 1 eye and 2 ears per person on the water, because you can really adapt your hearing too to anticipate that wave action too. So don't just rely on your eyes, but cue in with the other resources you have.
There is a question, Jessica is asking, should dead animals be recorded?
I think so. Anyone else have any? I think so. I think I've done that, particularly like the octopus, you know.
Yeah, or birds, or especially if you see quite a few things washed up, it couldn't hurt to document that.
I guess some of us even do surveys about what we find that's dead on the beach, right? So
that is true. And also the project curators might take those pictures and, you know, note the condition of the animal and then use that data, even if, you know, you're just uploading the picture and saying it's an octopus. They'll add that, that observation and be able to use that in their studies.
if you do that, sometimes it's helpful to do more than one shot. If it's a bird, you might want to, you know, rearrange it somewhat so that feathers can be seen, the head can, you know, other parts of it can be seen at different angles.
I see that a couple people raised their hands, and I'm hoping that you can just type into the chat or the Q&A. So Nancy asked, do you want us to track the approximate number of like species? No, it's not that formal of a survey. So you'll just take your pictures, and we'll go through that in a minute, but you'll just take your pictures and identify the animal, and then the app itself will be able to accumulate any data like that from the data that you've entered.
There was a question about project names and such. It's my understanding that iNaturalist will allow a project to just vacuum up all of the data. They had done an update last year that allowed that. Unless that's changed, I don't think you have to adhere yourself to a specific project, but maybe somebody else on the panel can speak directly to if that had been reverted from last year.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you can filter if you put in the same dates as the BioBlitz, you'll get that data, place and time, and you don't need to be part of the thing. But I think there is an advantage to registering, because if you do register, I think you get access to a quick summary of what happened in that event. So if you go there, it'll show you all of the observations, and you can actually see the whole list of them that other people have made. So it's a quick way to get back to it. And I think, Margaret, you told me that it also permits us to have that as a group. If we want to communicate to the group in our specific area, we can with one swipe reach all of you if we want to give you an update or something like that.
Right. So if you join a project, then the project administrator can send you messages about what's going on with the project. So that's an advantage.
And I think we all will say what our name is, right? Because I know you've got in Cascade Head BioBlitz 3, and you know, we have Otter Rock BioBlitz 2020 is our name.
We did have one more question, and then I'm going to move on, just keeping time in mind. Nancy wanted to know if we want sound recordings for species you can't photograph. Have any of the panelists done anything with sound recordings on iNaturalist? Because I have not.
I have not, but I think if it's something you can do, I think go for it. And if it works, so we can bring that in. I think it will bring it in, because it's just another evidence of its existence. So.
Yeah, and then Elizabeth was just sharing that Coast Watch Oregon Shores has a format for reporting that includes dead animals, debris, and disruptions, in addition to live creatures. Yeah, that project is a slightly different angle. It's a great program. So anyone who wants to participate in that should definitely check that out. All right, so I'm going to go over quickly how to use iNaturalist on your phone. If you're going to use a regular camera or just want to do it on the web for whatever reason, I'm not going to go over how to do that, but there are instructions on the iNaturalist website, so those can be accessed. And if you can't find them, just shoot me an email and I will send you the link, no problem. All right, so to participate using iNaturalist, you just get started by downloading the iNaturalist app to your smartphone. It's available for an Android or iPhone. And you make an iNaturalist account. And you'll be able to log into the iNaturalist website using that same ID and password, which can be nice. It can be nice to look at the data that way too, even if you're recording most of it on your phone. And then make your first observations. So I would recommend that you just try it at home first. You can, any plant in your yard, and in fact, the example that I'm going to show is a plant in my yard. And that way you're just doing it at home, where if anything is weird, you have time to work at those crustaceans before you're out at the beach. So this is a screenshot of what I see when I open the app on my phone. So you can see my past observations there. And let me close all these speaker views. There we go. So you can see all my past observations there. And then to add a new observation, you just tap this observe icon here that looks like a camera. And then a screen comes up that looks like this, and you can add one or more photos. So you can either take a photo right then by tapping on this big green button. This example is a hydrangea in my backyard. And if you're using a photo that you've already taken, you can tap on the icon that looks like a big pile of photos, and then you can choose photos from your phone's photo library. And then it will upload your photo. And once it's uploaded and visible, you can click next right here. And then you choose what you saw. So you'll see some, you'll click on this what did you see section, and you'll see some suggested species or genus. So in my case, they were pretty sure that it was hydrangeas, and I didn't know much more than that. So if I knew what species of hydrangea this was specifically, I could pick it from this list that pops up, and you can scroll further down and there'll be more options, or I could type it in this lookup species by name if I really knew what it was. But in this case, I don't know, I just know it's a hydrangea. So I chose the genus hydrangea by just tapping on this area right here. All right. So that brings you back to this details page where it shows that you've picked hydrangeas. Where you saw it, or when you saw it, sorry, should be saved automatically right here. So this was July 14th at 9:48 a.m. Where you saw it should also be saved automatically. So I marked this out because this was at my house. But it has like a rough address, or if you're tide pooling, it might just say you're in the Pacific Ocean, which is always kind of funny. And then it'll have latitude and longitude right underneath there. And then one thing I didn't point out in the instructions, but actually is interesting, this captive cultivated option. So actually in my case, I should have selected yes for this because this is a cultivated plant. This is not out in the wild, but I didn't. And when you're doing your BioBlitz, I'm assuming everything's going to be wild. So you wouldn't change this. And this is the default is no. So you save your observation by tapping share right here at the bottom. And then it uploads to share with the community. So this should happen automatically, but if it doesn't, you can tap the upload button, which would be where that big green button at the top is, or over here in line with this hydrangea observation. It might not upload if you don't have a strong cell signal where you are, which is often the case when you're out tide pooling. But the data will all be saved in the app. So the picture and what you thought it was will be saved in there. So you can upload it later when you're in a better spot. And then also if you need to edit it later, if you find out something about what species it is, you can change it later too, just right there in the app. So Tara mentioned this. If you see a plant or animal and you don't quite know what it is, like that hydrangea, other people, once you've uploaded it into iNaturalist, other people can see what you observed and say what they think it is. So in this case, this is a salmonberry that I saw in a local park. And several people agreed with me that it's a salmonberry. And once 3 people agree on what species it is, then it becomes a research grade observation, which means that it meets certain criteria for use in scientific studies. So that's kind of what you're aiming for, but don't worry if you're not getting a lot of those. But the real cool thing here, as Tara mentioned, is that if you take a picture of something you're not quite sure what it is, like, you know, it's a crab, but you don't know what kind of crab, in short order, people are going to come in and see your observation and say what species it is. This was particularly helpful for me once with birds when I thought something was maybe a snowy plover in a funny location, but it turned out to be a killdeer. And I learned something new that day. So, all right, so now I'm going to do something daring, which is switch over to YouTube to show a video version of what I just showed you. So this is a video that Cascade Head and let's see, and Oregon Coast Aquarium put together. How's that?
Better.
A little bit better.
Fellow BioBlitzers, my name is Ian, and I work for the Oregon Coast Aquarium in organizing the BioBlitz summer. This video is going to help you understand how to use the iNaturalist app while you're out in nature to make those observations that are critical to this project. With the app open on your device, making an observation is as simple as hitting the observe button. Doing so activates the camera on your device and allows you to take a picture of the species in question. Before doing so, make sure the species is in the middle of the frame and in focus. The next part is to identify that species. You'll want to hit the "What did you see?" section to get some potential suggestions if you have cell coverage or a Wi-Fi connection. If you have a good idea of what it is and it doesn't match any suggestions, enter that species name. Your device has already logged the date, time, and location of this observation, and all you need to do is hit the share button to upload that to the database. You've just made your first observation and joined thousands of other citizen scientists in engaging in their natural world in new and interesting ways. See you out there.
Right, so just quickly, we talked a little bit about projects in iNaturalist. They let you and the project curators group observations, and observations, like projects, are set up to fit certain parameters. So if your observation fits the parameters of that project, it'll be added automatically. But there are advantages to actually joining the project. So we'll be each talking about the projects for our sites that we have set up. So some of the parameters of a project would be like place, time, and taxonomic classification. Example projects would include the Cape Falcon species inventory. So that for us is within a certain region that's adjacent to the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. Anything that's observed there gets added to that project. And then for the BioBlitz 2020 at the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, it's within the span of time of this virtual BioBlitz. Things will show up there. Similarly, for the Cascade Head species inventory and their BioBlitz project they set up, another couple of interesting ones are the Oregon State Parks coastal species inventory. Anything you observe on the coast in Oregon will probably end up in that project. And then also tracking starfish wasting and recovery. If you observe a sea star, you're very likely to have that observation end up in this project, which scientists are using to track recovery from sea star wasting. So just to join a project in iNaturalist, at the bottom of your home screen, there's 3 dots. You're going to click for more, and you're going to select projects from the menu and then search to find a project. So in this example, I've searched for Cape Falcon. These 2 projects come up. I tapped on this project name to then open up this screen where there's a join button. Now you notice there's no observations in there yet, but that's because today's the first day of it. So hopefully pretty soon there will be observations in there. And if you go in there, you'll be able to see what other people are observing at Cape Falcon. Like here. So here's an example of what you would see if you looked at the Cape Falcon species inventory. And that can be interesting also while you're exploring, just to be like, oh, I'm seeing those too. So next we're going to go through each one of the Marine Reserve locations and let you know where and when and how to participate. But first, let's just pause to ask for questions. So I'm going to take a look in the Q&A and chat, and if any of the other panelists have anything they want to cover before we move on. All right, so Cynthia asked what the dates of the BioBlitz are. They're from today through the 26th. So day through the 26th, and we're going to show you when the low tides are during that time frame at each site. What is BioBlitz data used for? Does anyone have an answer for that one?
A lot of it is absence presence for the kind of data that we're collecting. So we're just identifying that, yes, this species is present, which can tell us a lot. And long term, we could look at this as a species migration, as with climate change and ocean conditions change. We may see species move out of one of these marine reserves and move north. You're seeing migration from California for species into Oregon. Washington will likely see our species move towards them. So that's one application.
That's a great example. Chris had a question about, past BioBlitzes have been on a single day or two. Since this will be on multiple days, is there a concern that there will be multiple inputs of the exact same marine life and perhaps overcounting the marine life? I think because there's a date stamp on what you're observing, any scientist using the data or natural resource manager or even us looking at the data can see what was collected all on one day, like on Tuesday. And so I don't think that there's any maybe more risk of overcounting. Did anyone else have any observations on that question?
Yeah, I think inevitably you're going to get overcount, right? I'm sorry, go ahead.
And it's not so much the number that matters, it's more of how many different types of species. So it's okay if multiple sea anemones are observed from many different participants. So the number doesn't so much matter as just documenting as many different species.
And thank you for the question and for participating last year at the Cascade Head one. So that was great.
All right, well then, if there aren't any more questions, let's go ahead into the individual sites. So starting with Cape Falcon, so it's still me talking for a couple more minutes here. Cape Falcon Marine Reserve is the northernmost of the marine reserves. And it's located just off of Oswald West State Park between Manzanita and Cannon Beach. And it includes a marine reserve and 2 MPAs. And here is the contact information for Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. And if you have any questions about BioBlitzing there, be sure to email me at this email address. So the site itself is 20 square miles and it has a no-take marine reserve, this red area, and then 2 associated MPAs. So the West MPA is the last mile out in the ocean, and out there, salmon fishing, petrol, and crabbing are allowed. And then there's a small shoreside MPA along Falcon Cove Beach where you can do recreational fishing by hook and line from the sandy beach only. And one interesting thing about our marine reserve up here is that it's adjacent to Oswald West State Park. So it's part of an interconnected system of conserved ecosystems on the land and in the ocean. And I know a lot of the other marine reserves have cool connections like that. So where we do our BioBlitz, what we've done for the last few years is go to the north end of Neahkahnie Beach, which is just north of Manzanita. And so this is a picture of the site. It's a bouldery site, but there's a lot of cool stuff there. And here's a picture from last year. This is Lisa from Haystack Rock Awareness Program who joined us for our BioBlitz in action. And there's just a lot of cool stuff in those tide pools there. It's a little bit of an unusual site. So how do you get there? You come into Manzanita on Nehalem Road. So this is north of the main entrance to Manzanita. And then you come to this split, this sort of Y-shaped intersection, and you can park either up here or down here. And then there's just about a 0.3 mile walk up to these tide pools up here. And when to go. So pick a low tide time when there's plenty of daylight, as I mentioned before. and arrive at least an hour before slack. And you can see that the beginning of this virtual BioBlitz, the minus tides are pretty darn early. But as you get into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, things are a little more doable. And then Friday and Saturday are positively leisurely with low tide at 10 and 10:42. So those are great times to get out there if you're not an early riser. But if you're a really early riser, sometimes you see some cooler things and it's a little quieter, which is nice. And this information, both the map and the tide table, I posted to the Facebook event. And if anyone didn't get that, feel free to email me and I'll send it out. And now I'm gonna kick it over to Paul for Cascade Head.
Thanks, Margaret. So like up north there, we have our land-sea connection, and that's with the entire Cascade Head Biosphere Reserve, which the Cascade Head Marine Reserve, which you see in the map on the left side of the map, is delineated. But our Biosphere Reserve, which is a UNESCO site, it's the only one in Oregon, exists basically from the tops of the Coast Range all the way down through the Salmon River estuary and out to sea 3 miles with the territorial sea, 3 nautical miles. So as far as the Marine Reserve goes, again, it was established. The monitoring came in 2012, and then harvest restrictions began in 2014. And for the red zone, that's what I like to call the research zone. That's where we're going to be doing our BioBlitz. You can't do the fishing, you can't do anything else, but it's research. That's what's important about these is this opportunity for comparison to other areas in our ocean. And then we have 3 marine protected areas that kind of horseshoe around the Marine Reserve. And for people that know Lincoln City well, the south boundary is at Surf Tides. So the Surf Tides Hotel, very, very commonly seen spot since the 60s, is the southern boundary of that Marine Reserve. Depth 0 to 50 meters. We're not going out that deep, so we don't have to really worry about that. But go ahead and hit next slide. So a little bit of a look of the kind of the bottom of the ocean from where we're at in our marine reserve and marine protected area, and you'll see kind of in the dark shaded where we're pointing at with Rhodes End, that's kind of the rocky outcropping, and then offshores is more rock out there. And so you do have quite a bit of biodiversity opportunity there, and then throughout the marine reserve, it is one of the more rocky habitats that we have out there. So. But we got a lot of sand, of course, too, sandy bottoms throughout the Marine Reserve, up and down Lincoln City. Next slide. So where to go? So we're focused on the Rhodes End area, which if you're coming into Lincoln City from the north, you're going to go through the first stoplight that takes you on West Devils Lake Road. But if you continue on to the second light, kind of where the shopping centers are, you head west down there, and you're heading to Logan Road, and you're basically you're almost there. You just head down the hill, and you end up at Rhodes End. It's a nice state park down there, so there's lots of parking and restroom facilities. And then once you get there, get ready for a nice sandy walk down the beach, about 20 minutes. So again, time yourself well enough that you can get back to your car or wherever your bike or whatever your transport is to get you back home. But again, our focus is in the Rhodes End area where there's a nice rocky outcropping, but really anywhere that you may be in the Marine Reserve will be captured as part of our project. So we have had people collecting from the other side towards Three Rocks when you actually get towards actual Cascade Head. And if you look at the bottom picture down there, if you're at a low enough tide and you can come around the rocky outcropping at Rhodes End, you can actually see Cascade Head. So we're not actually under Cascade Head, we are south of Cascade Head for this project, for the majority of this project. So it's an interesting viewpoint that a lot of people don't get unless you actually can get a low enough tide and get around. So I don't know if you can hear me now. Again, thanks for switching there. This is off of our website we put up, and we have a little gadget that you can access information about the weather, the tides, and the swells conditions. And those dates and times aren't going to change much from what we saw up north. It's just a little bit different as you're in different parts of the coastline. But if you want to go online, you can go to the cascadehead.org website and find this event and scroll down. You'll find all this information. So that's a really good resource for you post this webinar to reach out and look through. Next slide. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Sorry about the little connection glitch there
My apologies there.
Oh no, I may very well have been me. I don't know. All right, so we're going to move on to Dennis at Otter Rock. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if I do blip out, it will be me because I've got a kind of a sketchy internet connection here. I hope I don't get fading out too badly here. Anyway, this is a shot, kind of not actually aerial, but it's actually from the Otter Crest Loop Road. It gets quite a good elevation up there. And the outcropping on the upper part to the right is the punch bowl. And the punch bowl is something that a lot of people visit. It's one of the most popular places around. And then behind that is Beverly Beach. Actually, the reserve goes about a mile down from the punch bowl, and Otter Rock is actually down across from Beverly Beach there. So it's reaches well beyond the punch bowl, and then it comes north of that second head, which is the Otter Crest community. You can see a building there, which is a restaurant. So it covers the area just north of that and all the way up past the punch bowl and about a mile down the beach. Okay, next slide. Okay, great. This is a map that shows where it is, and you can see that a lot of it is covered by the beach down there, and the punch bowl is that first outcropping on the north side of that beach. And then, but the place you're going to want to go for this purpose is actually between those two outcroppings that we saw a minute ago, so that the Marine Gardens Beach is north of the punch bowl. Next slide. So here are a couple of pictures. This is what it looks like at low tide. You can see that we get quite a bit of crowds sometimes. The rock that you see offshore is actually gull rock. It's not Otter Rock. Otter Rock is further to the south down near the Beverly Beach area. But there's this vast exposure of different types of terrain, some of which is, green seaweed. Don't walk on that, you'll slip. And in and among the rocks, there are a lot of mollusks and crustaceans and shellfish and that sort of thing. So you can see there's a lot of tide pool opportunities there. A lot of people come at low tide. And there are a lot of oyster catchers, several oyster catchers who are very noisy. And when people aren't there, they'll be trolling around on those rocks off there looking for food. On the right-hand side of this is a map. This shows you the relation of the beach to Route 101. So you can see Route 101 swinging off to the right-hand side of that map. And then there's an inner loop. It's the Otter Crest Loop Road. And from there, you head into toward the shore as if you were going to the Devil's Punch Bowl, which you can see there at the kind of the lower right-hand corner. And instead of doing that, take a right on C Avenue and park in the second parking lot, which is just before the end of the road, and then walk further down there, and you'll see the entrance to the beach. A lot of people go to the top of the punch bowl and say, "How did those people get down there?" and they try to climb down on their own, which is not a good thing to do. So avoid the punch bowl area, take a right on C Avenue, and you'll see the entrance to the beach down there. And they're on the north side, and both the north side and the south side are very good tide pool areas, if that's what you want to document. Next slide. Okay, my apologies here. I probably should have just done all the low tide indicators, but you can see that on the 21st, we have a -2 foot tide. And there's another one on the 22nd as well. They're kind of early in the morning, but if you're going to go, that's a great time. You'll have the most exposure in the tide pools and in the beach at that point. I think I'm definitely going to make either the 21st or the 22nd for my own observations. And you can see the chart how the how it dips down in the middle of the morning and then way back up, not quite at the king tide level, but so you can use a chart like this. You can find this chart on a lot of different websites, and these are the ones from Depot Bay.
All right, great. Thank you, Dennis.
The ones I have. I will say also, and I think Tara pointed this out, that if you do go in that flat area where you saw all the people, be very careful, because you can get into a cul-de-sac and not know how to get your way back out. So, so pay attention to how you got in so you can get back out.
Yeah, those flat areas always kind of make me nervous. Got to keep an eye on what the ocean's doing. All right, so now let's kick it over to Tara from Cape Perpetua.
Yeah, so there's multiple areas off of the Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve and protected areas. A little bit about Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve. It's Oregon's largest marine reserve at 14.3 square miles, and it also has an additional 19 square miles of marine protected areas to the north and to the south. So it stretches all the way from Smelt Sands and Yachats, all the way south, just past the Sea Lion Caves, almost hitting Florence. And so I've listed several locations, and I've also, you can go to the next slide too, Margaret.
Okay.
This is also just tides I take from Lily Weather for Yachats area. It seems to be the best one that I can find for that specific location. But I also posted a visual of locations and low tides in the Facebook page. And if you go to capeperpetuacollaborative.org to our events tab, tomorrow I will be posting the week-long project with also some information on tides and locations. But the locations that you can go to, and all of these are pretty much off of 101. And to get there, I just do a quick Google search, but otherwise you'll see signs off of 101. And these go from north to south. So there's Yachats State Park, which is just off of Yachats on the north side of the river. Cape Perpetua, Neptune State Scenic Viewpoint, Strawberry Hill, Bob Creek, Ocean Beach, Tokatee, and Hissita Head. And I've listed all of these areas that have intertidal areas that are accessible during low tides. Many of these have limited parking, so keep that in mind. If one is full, you might want to just continue on and hit the next spot and see what you can find there. But yeah, I hope you have a good time, and if you can hit more than one spot. Oh yes, and the Cape Perpetua area, the intertidal area is some of the most biologically diverse in the Pacific Northwest, so I hope you can monitor quite a bit. And it's a great land-sea connection as well, because it's got the coastal rainforest there and a couple of protected wilderness areas. So if you are in other areas, back on a trail or anything like that, do feel free to use the iNaturalist app to document any plants or other species you might see as well, and it will also connect up into our project if you go beyond the intertidal area. And again, our website is capeperpetuacollaborative.org, and our Facebook page is Cape Perpetua Marine Reserve.
Great, thank you, Tara. And now we're going to go all the way down to Port Orford for Tara Ramsey.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we're down here at the far southern end of the state. Interestingly, so we are the furthest south marine reserve. And we're also the south of the Cape Blanco State Park, which is a biogeographic break. So we're going to see different species. Their territory will end at that biogeographic break. So you'll see some different species north and south of that area. So that's a little interesting thing about our reserve. It is a 2.7 square mile reserve with a 5 square mile MPA coming off of that. and it is located between Coal Point and Rocky Point. There we go, there's our map. So it's just south of the little tiny town of Port Orford on the 101. Just right off the 101, you'll have an access at Rocky Point, which is the furthest north part of our reserve. There is a small parking lot there. It's usually not too crowded, so the access is fairly good. You can also access the southern part of our reserve from the Humbug Mountain State Park. There's a little trail that goes from the state park out to the beach, and you have good access to the intertidal if you just walk north a little bit. There's also pretty decent access during one of these low tides if you pull off at the Hubbard's Creek pull off and walk south for maybe 10 to 20 minutes. So there's lots of different access points. And here's our tide table. Oops, my face is in the way here. So we've definitely got some super early morning low tides for anyone who likes to get up that early. I will personally be going on July 21st for that negative 1.7 tide, or maybe this 22nd, when it's a little bit more friendlier for the wake up time. That's basically all I got. Oh, one other thing with us is we have an OSU field station in Port Orford, which is very active with the reserve. They're doing all kinds of research with the rockfish and other species, and we partner with OSU professors and students and scientists all the time. So I was contacted by this Primed Network and the Marine Wildlife Health, which both of these are groups which you can locate in the iNaturalist app super easily. I just went out today to see how they worked, and it was very user-friendly to go into the projects and then simply type in these 3 projects are the ones that we want you to become a part of if you're doing iNaturalist at Redfish Rocks. But the Primed Network is studying the health of these species that we're documenting with iNaturalist. So it will give you the option to, if you can tell, a lot of things we don't know how healthy they are if we're not scientists, but if you can tell that something is dead or alive, you can mark it as dead or alive, and you can also make comments on the health of the species. And scientists will then look at those species to determine how healthy those populations are, which is super cool. I believe you can do that at all of the reserves as well. I don't think that's specific to Redfish Rocks. I think you can join those projects from anywhere, which is cool.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that information, Tara.
No problem.
All right. So our last slide here is resources, but I just remembered as we approached it that I did not get a website address from Friends of Otter Rock. So sorry about that. That's been left blank, but I will insert that information and then make a PDF of the PowerPoint available. So Dennis pointed out in the chat that Fawn pointed out that the BioBlitz project at Otter Rock is called Otter Rock BioBlitz 2020. So that's the one you're going to want to look for if you are doing your observations at Otter Rock. So let's see if there are any more questions to answer, and if our panelists would like to add anything else. All right, so Pam asks if a magnifying glass could be used in photography. Has anyone tried that? Because I have not.
I haven't tried a magnifying glass, but I have tried taking pictures through scopes. And I'd say go for it. If you can try it and it works out, try it out. Yeah, definitely. Get a closer up view.
What was that, Dennis? You were talking, but you cut out.
I was just saying that, my internet connection is unstable. So
I can see
I was just saying it would be tricky to use a magnifying glass, and most iPhones have a feature where you can just split it and zoom it that way.
All right. Then Kristen asked why the amazing tidepool area in Oceanside is not included in the BioBlitz. It may not be near a marine reserve, but it's a really rich area for marine life observation. That is very true. So this effort is focused on the marine reserves, but that's not to say that other, BioBlitz surveys don't take place in Oceanside. And if you're interested in that area, if you're not already connected with Friends of New Tarts Bay, I would encourage you to reach out to them and just find out what's going on with any BioBlitzes that might be happening in Oceanside. Does anyone have anything else to add to that answer?
Only one small thing is that, connect with the partner that Margaret said, but also you can still use the iNaturalist app in any location, anywhere. So it's not just for these locations. These are just specific projects that we've created you can connect to.
Great, thank you, Tara. So Pam asks, why is the Cape Falcon tidepool area limited to the north end of Neoconi Beach? Why not in tidepools at Short Sands Beach and those south from Falcon Cove? So the reason for that is we have historically done our events at Neoconi Beach because of parking and crowds. So we do not generally take groups to the beach at Short Sands because it is such a popular and crowded place. And Falcon Cove, we don't do group events there either typically. Just because there's not a lot of parking and it's basically just a neighborhood. That said, those areas are included in that Cape Falcon region. So if you were to do some BioBlitzing there, your data would be included in the Cape Falcon species inventory and in the BioBlitz and would be very useful. So we just don't actually do public events in those locations. So we have, if you find a sea star on the beach sand, if it's alive, should you take it to a tide pool with water? Anyone?
I would say no. I would say you're in a marine reserve, and the idea is that nature's taking its place, and that is kind of the goal, is to have it be as nature would allow it. So that would be my take on it. Others' thoughts? Frozen up, maybe.
I'm torn on that one. I say there's no hard and fast rule.
Fawn's suggesting she might say yes because someone may have pulled it off, which is a fair point. There maybe have been somebody pulling it off and then realized it was alive and a creature they weren't supposed to take. But so I would still limit the activity to not interrupting what you may find, because that may be a distribution pattern for an animal too. I mean, it's not necessarily consistent with what we might think things migrate with, but you never know. So.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And then we have what I think is the last question, which is Chris wants to know if it's okay to do Cascade Head and Otter Rock.
Say yes.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. And in fact, a lot of these are fairly close. I mean, I'm 50 miles from me. I can get pretty much anywhere but Red Rocks, and which I have to say that Humbug State Park is fantastic. If people get down there, they should totally get down there. So
visit Port Orford.
Yeah, it's a lovely space.
All right, and then for Friends of Otter Rock, Fawn says they don't have a website yet, but they do have their Facebook page. And there's also another project going on there, will be the Rocky Shores project. So look for that. So when I finish up this PowerPoint and just post a PDF version of it for people to look at, I'll include the Facebook page for Otter Rock. So any final thoughts?
Yeah, just briefly, I read here that Lynn had said that as far as the Sea Star kind of question goes, interfere only with human-caused events. That is the protected, that is the protected raptor rule, she says. So there's benefit to having some carcass on the beach, I guess. I mean, there's food and other things. So not carcass, but live animals still. So I guess that's part of their thinking. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. That's a very good point. Thanks.
Last thing, I would encourage people to follow that Facebook event, because my goal is to get at least some of those snaps out there that people are putting up from Cascade Head onto the page, and it'll be more fun that way. And so it's a way to stay connected and that thing. But definitely visit all the respected websites or different folks so that you can really connect with your more specific areas, because there's a lot of good information there about the marine reserves and other spaces that are attached, like the Biosphere Reserve.
Yep, I agree. Thanks so much, Paul. Do the Terras have anything to add before we wrap up?
Just to have a good time and be safe and enjoy yourself. We're, I think, supposed to have some beautiful weather, and just have a good time doing it. Hopefully you'll learn something new and see something new.
That's a wonderful sentiment. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This will be recorded, so if there's any key part that you missed, you'll be able to view it within the next day or so. And also, we'll be posting our information about where to go and when to go on the Facebook events. And those of us with websites will put it on our websites. So thanks, everyone, for your interest. Enjoy the beautiful coast. And oh, thanks, Beth. Thank you for attending. And we look forward to working with Oregon Coast Aquarium next year. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.
Enjoy the BioBlitz.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.